on in, everybody. It is the Mo Vaughn podcast, which is always powered by Perfect Game and the Vaughn Sports Academy. And Mo, very excited to talk. This is a guy, every time I saw him on the mound against my favorite team, I knew it was curtains because the Marlins couldn't hit him ever. I knew that was the case.
It had to. It was a stressful night trying to play against him and hit him. It was frustration at its highest, but it was also what I think needs to be understood. Like in today's age, this guy knew how to pitch.
Absolutely,
and that's what I think is being lost in this whole thing. So I'm excited to talk to him.
Jamie Moyer, thanks for joining the show. Really appreciate you.
All right. Love being on. Thanks for having me.
Jamie, let's do a little bit of inventory, man. Like, you have done a lot of great things, but talk to me about, how's your family? How your boys?
We're good. I got a boy. My oldest lives down near you, Mo, and I got another one in Seattle. And I actually have my last baseball player. He's playing at the University of Nebraska this year. Yeah, he's an outfielder. So, I'm pulling my toes almost out of the water with my boys playing, and then I've got 2 girls in college and 2 girls, one married, one engaged, and I've got kids kind of all over the place.
Man, you got the roster and the stats on everyone.
Jamie, you that Nebraska team, I thought was a game away from going to the World Series?
Yeah, my son was not there last year. He transferred in from a junior college, and he's going to be fighting for an outfield position in the fall, obviously. But it really, when it counts, is in the spring.
So not only this guy got one going right now, he's had 2 others that were drafted. Right? You had 2 other boys that were drafted.
Yeah, my oldest Dylan played in the Dodgers organization, and then at the end he played a little bit in the Mariners organization. And my next guy, Hutton, was drafted out of Pepperdine and played in the Angels organization.
Great. Unbelievable.
What's that? Just the process of a parent when you've been to the heights. How enjoyable is that part as opposed to perfecting your craft? What's it like passing it on, like that journey?
Look, as I told my boys growing up, I don't care what you do. If you're going to play sports, you pick your sports. You don't have to play baseball because I played baseball. And, when they were younger, they played basketball, they played ice hockey, a little bit of football, some soccer, and golf. And for whatever reasons, their own reasons, they all kind of came back to baseball. And, I think, baseball is such a wonderful sport at any age. I think they had great memories of playing, when they were younger. But as they started to get older, especially my older guys, I was still playing when they were in high school and college. So they could kind of see it and understand it from a different perspective than most kids get. And I think they enjoyed that part of it. And even my youngest guy who's at Nebraska, McCabe, he was still to the age, I can remember in 2008, we won a World Series in Philadelphia. And that guy, his older brothers had him crawling around a locker room floor full of champagne and beer, picking up champagne corks, collecting champagne corks. So, my sons have all kinds of memories of my playing career, but also the successes that we had as the organizations I played in, and the fun we had as a family.
Jimmy, what was your biggest thing? Listen, you had 2 kids, 2 boys drafted. You got one now going to Division I major college. As a dad, and I'm sure as a coach, what was your philosophy, in terms of how you talk to them, treat them, bringing those experiences? What was your philosophy? And I think this is very important because you and I both know there's a lot of parents out there right now who need to have a little bit of education on how to treat their athletes as both their children but also as what they're doing in life?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mo. And I think as I've looked back at being around my sons playing, I guess the word they use is the helicopter parent. And I was never going to be that way, but I was not raised that way. My dad coached me, but my dad treated me just like any other kid on the team. I got no preferential treatment, no special treatment. And, as I got older, I really kind of looked back at how how my dad treated me. And, it didn't matter what sport my kids played, my sons or my daughters. I learned through the experience of my parents when they would come to other sports that I played. They sat, they watched, they enjoyed. And they enjoyed it through my enjoyment, not through their own enjoyment, trying to, for them to get something out of it, or my parents telling me what I should be doing or what I shouldn't be doing. They let that up to my coaches. And, my passion for any of the sports that I played, obviously, eventually gravitated towards baseball. I love baseball and still do. And I had an unbelievable passion for baseball as a young kid. Yeah, I played midget football, I played bitty basketball, but I realized as I started to get a little bit older, I wasn't going to go anywhere there, and I really didn't know that I was going to go anywhere playing baseball. But I had the most enjoyment out of it. So my thing to any kids that are listening or parents that are listening, let your kids have fun. Let your kids learn how to fail. Okay, because when you watch baseball at the college level, because there's a lot more on college baseball on TV, and at the professional level, what do most players do? They fail. And it took me a long time into my career to understand that I had to learn how to deal with failure and adversity. And that's what sports are about. Whether it's failure, adversity, and you can throw injuries in on that as well. And I think when you have your parents supporting that, and then after the game, it's not pulling your son or daughter aside and sitting them down and berating them on what they didn't do well, or their lack of performance or what it might be. I learned even as when I was a professional, a lot of times if I was taken out of a game and maybe didn't have one of my better games, my pitching coaches would kind of let me go. And they really, they'd say, "Hey, how you feeling?" That kind of stuff. But there wasn't really any meaty kind of conversations until they were able to go home and sleep on it. I was able to go home and sleep on it. And I had to stew over that. And you start to be able to, as a professional, you start to learn how to pick out what's important and what was on you and how the flow of the game was going. And I felt like I always had a better conversation the next day with my coaches versus if you're coming out of the game immediately and then trying to have a conversation, you're so amped up as an athlete and your mind is racing. Sometimes you may say the wrong thing, you may act in a wrong way, and that's really not what you're looking to do as an individual on a team, especially in a team sport.
Jerry, sometimes there's these things that, I want to know if the tales are as true as they are, because you have almost like this lore about you now when people come out with these stories. So I saw one that was on social media this week about the idea that you were once, the Cubs offered you a coaching job and you went on to pitch 20 more years.
Yeah.
True. And then
Very
could
true.
you reflect on that, the idea to have that kind of fortitude of an organization saying, this may not be for you. You coach, and you're like, how about 2 decades in the more in the majors?
Right. Well, look, I don't know that any player or most players have no idea where their career is going to take them, nor did I. And I look back at this. I'll cut my career into halves or quarters, and up until I was 29 years old, I was probably a very inconsistent pitcher. With a lack of velocity, but velocity wasn't the main thing as important then as it is now. I mean, velocity is always important, but to me, it's the variables or the variations with your off-speed pitches, the difference in the speeds and the movement on the ball. And I think if you ask any pitcher that, they would tell you that. And you ask any hitter what makes a pitcher difficult to hit, Well, if he can throw all of his pitches to both sides of the plate and be able to change speeds, that makes it a very difficult day for a hitter to hit. But yeah, but for me, at that age of 29, I still felt like I had something to offer to the game. And I didn't know this, but somebody turned me on to a book called The Mental Guide to Baseball by Harvey Dorfman and Carl Keel. And I read that book and really thought I understood it pretty well, and then had an opportunity that off season to spend 2.5 days with Harvey Dorfman in his home. And we really we didn't talk about strikeouts, walks, that kind of stuff. We talked about things from the shoulders up, how I approached the game, how I prepared myself, what I thought of myself, the positive words I use versus the negativity. And Mo, I know you can probably recall this with teammates that you played with. If you're around a lot of negativity, that breeds negativity. And when you're around positive people speaking positively, even through negative experiences, and you're trying to pull something positive out of those negative experiences, boy, you can really turn some of those negative things into wonderful learning lessons and become better through the mistakes that you've made. And that's after spending time with Harvey, after being 29 years old, I came home, I started to revamp my mindset and what I was thinking about and what I was doing. And I actually worked on it for the rest of my career. In those 20 extra years that you had alluded to that the game gave me, or I earned in those years. But that made a big difference. Look, you can go to any perfect game event, you can go to any college event, you can go to any major league game. There is tons of talent on the field. But how many times have you watched or followed a player's career through any of these events or seasons or teams, and you go, wow, that guy never got the most out of his talent? And for me, looking back, and again, I'm not here to judge any teammate or say he was an underachiever or an overachiever, but by being around players, I understood that sometimes if you can't get out of your own way, boy, you're just going to tread water. And I learned how to get out of my own way, put a positive spin on things, and just change my thinking in a positive way. And it made a huge difference. Yeah, I still had to go out and compete. I still had to go prepare. I still had to work out in the off season. Those are the things I enjoyed. Those are, to me, they were givens. But as a player, you're always looking to fine tune your skill sets. And this skill set for me was one of my tools, was my mind and my brain. And learning how to understand that and deal with that made a big, eventually was a big difference in my career.
So from your standpoint, like when you were preparing to take down batters, like, was it a lot of prep of knowing what their strengths and weaknesses were? Or did you go more into what your strengths were to try and get guys out?
Well, that's a great question as well. But, there's a lot of things that dictate that. Are you in the beginning of the game? Are we in the middle of the game? Am I down to possibly my last inning or my last hitter or my last out? So, if we go to that one, you're at the end of your outing. Now it's every pitch is like it's your last pitch, right? Say Mo Vaughn comes to the plate. My first pitch is going to be my best pitch, right? Because it might be my last pitch, right? If it's in the middle of the game, I got to if anybody out there plays golf, you manage yourself on a golf course, right? It's called course management. Well, as a pitcher on the mound, I learned how to manage myself, right? Yeah, as you alluded in the beginning of this podcast, facing the Marlins. Look, I knew the Marlins were very talented, and they were very talented, but they were very young. They didn't have the discipline that they needed to have. They developed, they developed it over time, but in that time of their careers, I believe they all fed off of their aggression, and I knew that. And I also learned that every hitter has an ego, right? And if I can figure out what kind of ego each guy has or what he's like at the plate, and look, we know the 3-hole, the 4-hole, the 5-hole hitter. Why are they hitting there? They drive in runs, they hit home runs. So for me, it was like, okay, how do I get ahead of these guys? Most of these guys I can expand the zone on if I can get ahead. So that made my job easier. And if I could just show them enough that I could pitch inside and keep them interested inside, I could keep the down and away open for myself. And the guys would get on base, I would pick over to first 2, 3, 4 times because I know the hitter was really anxious at home plate. So I start to slow the game down. And now, you get ahead, you nibble a little bit, maybe they pull a ball foul. Now I'm ahead in the count. Now I just start pulling the string even more. And then again, excite them with the fastball in or, throw something in off the plate, maybe double up in if I'm ahead in the count, go back away. And now I'm going back to my strength.
Yeah, it was a nightmare, Mo. Like I'd sit there in these orange seats and I'd just be like, it would be only me and a few other friends. And I'd just be like, it's Jamie Moyer. We're sunk for today.
This is exactly what I wanted him to talk about, that I want people at home to understand of the game inside the game. Yep. What is Jamie, when I faced him, what was his strengths? He knew what I was trying to do. And then now we even see, the mind games that he's playing, throwing over, looking for foul balls, understanding and see, what he used to do was he'd soft you to death, and you're sitting back and you're waiting. And then when he throws that 80-mile-an-hour fastball, it looks like it's 90 because he's trying to add, subtract, up, down, in, and out. And it made for a very, very long night if you weren't synchronized as a hitter. I faced Jamie when I got to AAA. He was with the Orioles. The one thing that I remember is he was pitching, and I'm excited. I'm in AAA, and I'm like, oh, this is great. We were playing. It was cold. I think we both had heaters on.
Early in the season, yep.
Early in the season, and I'm swinging out of my ass, and he's just painting, and I'm going, why can't I hit this guy? Why can't I hit? I'm sure now that I know, he's using me to get me to make mistakes.
Exactly.
I think what everybody needs to understand, that there is a pitching pattern. There is a way that they're trying to do things. He's trying to throw the ball in to get you out of the way, make it look like something to go back to his strength. And people at home really need to understand that what really pitching is about, and he personified that.
Well, Mo, if I can add to that too, another thought that I always had was you have to pitch to contact, right? I want you to hit the ball, but I want you to hit the ball on my terms, not your terms, right? And if you think about that statement, I've seen enough, youth baseball, travel baseball, and I get what it's all about today. It's all about velocity and who can throw the hardest and who can pitch at the top of the zone. And the down ball with angle is just as hard to hit, I think, as the ball at the top of the zone, right? It's further from your eyes. It's got movement. It's moving in 3 directions, and you're trying to hit a round ball with a round bat. So we don't have to make it any harder than it already is. But my goal here is to, like you were saying, Mo, add and subtract, but also be able to read swings, understand the situation, know what your abilities are, knowing I already know what Mo Vaughn wants to do. Now, if I face him in Boston, boy, I feel like he's got a big advantage because if you start down the right field line, he's got the pesky pole to hit around, right? And then, and Mo's big and strong enough to hit the ball out of any part of that ballpark. But his saving grace is that green silly monster in left field, where he could take a check swing and hit a ball off the wall and stroll into second base thinking, wow, I just did some damage. Well, you did, but I am not going to let that mentally beat me, right? And I'm gonna feed off of what you're gonna give me, and I think that's again, when you're talking about youth sports, you can't expect a young kid to maybe understand all this, but as a coach, what I'm trying to do, or I would be trying to do, is I want to get you as a pitcher to start reading swings. What is it? What does an inside out swing look like versus a hitter that comes around the ball? right? That's two different swings. That's two different ways to pitch to people. And it's all about strike one. You got to get ahead. If you have a secondary pitch that you can get over the plate, especially when you're behind in the count, you now have the advantage.
Listen, you are spot on. I'm right there where you were. I'm actually on the field coaching. And this is the stuff that parents, pitching coaches need to hear, is about how to actually really pitch, read swings, figure out what guys are trying to do. And you're right. Like I tell people, a walk in 13U is just as bad as a walk in the major league. It's the same game. We just try to stop inventing the game.
Yep.
Get back to the guys like the guy we're talking to, listen to the information that he's giving, and let them start teaching what is necessary to be successful. And this is why I'm so glad we interviewed him, because everybody's talking about power, 95, 96, 100 miles an hour. This guy did it with 80. This guy did it with 80.
And the unfortunate thing, Mo, in today's world, there's probably a lot of college pitchers and probably some high school pitchers too that will not get an opportunity professionally because they're mid 80s or upper 80s, but they're awfully successful. They can pound the zone. They can pitch with off speed behind in the count, but they're not going to get the opportunity because the potential that's being scouted is not there or not seen, or they haven't developed enough yet to get the opportunity in professional baseball. And, that's where the game is today. I'm not bitter about it. I'm just sharing a fact.
I just think that we missed the boat, though. We missed the boat on a lot of people. Listen, I'm not so sure my 60 time would have got me in the draft room.
Right. Right.
To be honest with you.
Yep.
But I just feel like we missed the boat on so many good players because of numbers.
That's exactly right.
Go out and look at what they can do, how they're pitching, and guys like that can see that.
Yep.
Do you feel, Jamie, like also one of the things, it takes a uniqueness away from each challenge of a pitcher, like a rotation that has Randy Johnson and Jamie Moyer in it.
Right.
Through a series can make it challenging for a team because you got to face one thing one day. If you're facing,
that's two different thoughts.
If you're facing 6 guys throwing 99, maybe by the third game, they're all the same, but you're facing a repetition. I feel like one of the things that's great about baseball is you could change from batter to batter. You could change from game to game on the pitches you're facing. So do you feel like there's just an element of just the creativity of a roster and where you look for to fulfill a team?
Yep. I know for a fact that when I was playing in Seattle with Randy Johnson, Lou Piniella would back us up together. And there were a lot of times where certain left-handed hitters wouldn't face Randy Johnson, right? But I felt like when the day I was pitching, guys were lining up at the bat rack, to face me. But if I had any control about it, I would be, like for me, I was told don't throw lefties changeups in, right? And I'm like, why? And nobody could give me an answer. And I started working on it, and I started doing it, and I had success with it. And then I started fooling around as I got. Yep. Right. And look, if I threw a two-seamer in that had a little run to it and it ran off the plate, and then I backed it up with a changeup 10 miles an hour, 12 miles an hour slower, and it looks like a fastball out of my hand, what's a hitter going to react to? He's going to react to fastball. Right. And if he makes contact with it, he's going to pull it in the right field stance, right? And what is that? That's just a strike for me. But what did I do? I sped your bat up, right? And now I've sped your bat up. Now, based on the situation and what's going on, now I can, maybe I can double up in there. Maybe I can go in and see how far you'll chase me in. Or now I can throw something down and away, right? And that, to me, that's the cat and mouse game that goes on with the hitter and the pitcher.
Listen, we're both Northeast guys. He's Sellersville, Pennsylvania, St. Joseph's, the only retired number in St. Joe's history. that's that pitching, man. That's that East Coast. That's that mentality. He definitely had it. Let's
Well,
talk about
here I'd like to, since we got this platform, I'd love to share something with you. The thing that I really struggle with, what are we seeing more of in baseball? Arm injuries, right? Yeah, I get it. Guys are chasing that high velocity. However, and a lot of kids go to pitching coaches and go to pitching camps and all that kind of stuff. And I don't condone any of that. But what I struggle with is you go to most of these places, nobody talks about arm care. And to me, my first thing, I'm actually working with a high school kid right now from Tacoma, Washington. And my first thing is we got to get you on a weight program. It doesn't have, you're not going to turn into a football player, but you're going to do baseball specific exercises, right? Not only in the weight room, but then we're going to put you with a physical therapist. And it's not rehab, because rehab happens after you have surgery. I like to call it prehab. Okay. We're trying to keep you as healthy as possible. And I'll tell you, I want to say it was 89 or 90, when I was with the Rangers, I got hurt for the first time. I missed about 3 months, went on the DL, now it's called the IL, and came back, felt healthy enough, but it didn't really perform like I wanted to. I went home that off season, hired myself a physical therapist, and worked on the smaller muscles in my arm, shoulder, my back, and my core. And the next year I went to spring training, I felt like I had a brand new arm. And I did it every off season after that for the rest of my career. So, as now a retired player, and people go, oh, you played a long time. How did you do it? What's your secret? Well, that's not a secret. I just let the cat out of the bag. But that's one thing that I don't think people talk enough about. And Mo, how many times have you been on a team where maybe it's your star or, a couple of your pitchers on your team that are quite effective? All of a sudden, I can't pitch. My shoulder hurts. I can't pitch. My back hurts. I can't, because they don't know how to take care of themselves.
And you know what it is also is that I feel today that in the major leagues, they're missing guys like this. They're missing guys that have done it and know how to do it. They're just using numbers. They're not looking at for information from the boys that have done it and done it the way that and know how to do it. And that's why. And I always get scared when I think about this whole, what is it, RPMs or they're trying to spin the ball harder, Nobody, you guys never worried about spin rate. You never talked about spin rate. Randy Johnson never talked about spin rate. Roger never talked about spin rate.
It's all about the results on the field, isn't it, Mo?
That's right.
It's all about consistent results on the field.
Why are we doing it? Like same with X velocity. Why are you worried about the ankle? Hit down through the ball, and the ball will go from the guys that it's supposed to go.
Hey, Mo, if you hit a ball over the green monster out onto the highway, did you get more points for it because it went on the highway, or was it the same amount of points?
Right, just get it over the wall. I don't care if it chips the top of it.
Yep.
It led Sports Center today, Shohei Ohtani's hardest hit ball ever. I was like,
who cares, bro? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Jimmy,
look, that's what the game's calling for, and that's what they're chasing. You're not going to change it, but I think over time, there needs to be a little bit of change. And have them, I've heard many people say, let's make this work together. But how do you make that work together? That's the question.
What about in season? Like, when you talked about setting yourself up to go into the season, but like, was there care in the season that you?
Oh yeah. It's a little different care during the season than it is in the off season, because in the off season, you're not putting the stress and the strain on your body like you are during the season. So again, that's where your wonderful, well-qualified professional trainers come into play. I got to believe every team now has a physical therapist on staff. Massage therapy, I think, is huge.
Players,
recovery is huge.
They have just as many coaches as they have players now on the field. It's unbelievable.
Yep.
Jamie, let me
game though.
Listen, I'm with you. We can talk for days about this. Let's go over some stats that I think can put a bow on this in a way that people understand really what you were. 25-year Major League Baseball career. Okay, pitching, 25 years in Major League Baseball. Number one, pitched for 8 teams, 269 wins, 478 starts, an ERA of 4.25 with 2,441 strikeouts. And this guy should be in the game somewhere. He was, an all-star in 2003, World Series champion in 2008. He won the Roberto Clemente Award in 2003 and is inducted into the Mariners Hall of Fame.
Well, you know what I'm most proud of? I pitched over 4,000 innings in the major leagues. And to me, that shows some longevity, right? I made over 600 starts in the major leagues. Again, that shows longevity. It shows health. I'll be the first to admit, not every one of those 4,000 innings were good innings, right? I had my share of bad innings. But what I did do is I learned from the bad innings. I've learned from the bad outings. I've learned from the mistakes. I'm willing to stand up in front of all. Look, I lead Major League Baseball history in home runs given up. Okay. Am I proud of that? No. But to be able to accomplish that, I had a lot of opportunity. And I think, and you probably got a few of those. I'm sure I'm in your book that you've hit a few of those off of me.
But that's when I knew I was learning what to do.
Did you like facing him?
I hated facing him because he wouldn't hang nothing. But the couple of that he hung, I got to him, and I was like, maybe you're starting to arrive as a player when you could put it together. There's always benchmarks, that we need to understand as hitters. He needs, I'm getting this guy out. Well, listen, this guy used to get me out. I made an adjustment. You know what I mean? So he was that for me. I got one thing I got to always ask you what you did, and I knew what you were doing, but it was so funny. So Jamie would want to change the ball. Okay, I'm at the plate. You step
and
out.
That was legit. I wasn't doing it.
Let me tell you what he tells you. So he would want to change the ball. Okay. So you'd step back. I don't know if he was on the mound. No, he was in front of the mound, and he would fire in a fastball as hard as he could to the catcher to change the ball. And I'm going, why the hell is he doing this? He doesn't even run. He's just trying to get me thinking. Is that the truth?
It turned into that. Yeah, it's a free pitch for me. I could throw you a ball up at your eyes because the catcher was standing up. I'd throw the ball into the catcher, and that's how we used to get rid of the ball. They just throw it off the side of the field. Well, I used it, and I tried to throw a high pitch with some velocity to it. Now I could go back and get my new ball, or eventually get a new ball and throw you something down and change the speed.
Man. So wait, when you guys had a year together in Boston, or did you not cross over?
I don't think we crossed.
No. We played. I played in 06 96 in Boston. And we were miserable. On paper, we had a really good team. The first half of the season, we were miserable. We couldn't get out of our own way. And then the second half, I got traded at the trading deadline. But the second half, I've always said, if that season would have gone another month, the Red Sox would have been in the running.
Yep. Jamie, let's talk about something that I know is important to you. I know you're not involved with it now, but you started a program to help young people. Talk a little bit about that, because that may be your greatest feat that you have ever accomplished. Talk a little bit about that
Well,
program. And
thank you for that, Mo.
I want to tell you something to go along with that once you're done.
Yeah, we started an organization. Well, we started a foundation, and we've rebranded, or it's been rebranded, and I'm no longer involved with it. But it was called the Moyer Foundation, and we started grief camps for children, and that would be a child from the age of 8 to I think it was 16 or 17. And what we ended up doing, we started with one grief camp in the Seattle area, and then we thought, wow, it had such an impact. And this was a camp. Let me get out of all this background noise. It's probably not good for you guys. I got somebody out with a chainsaw across the river from me. But we started these grief camps um, that, like I said, they were free. They were for children under ages 8 to 17. And these children had lost somebody important in their lives. It could be a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, a parent, a grandparent, a school teacher, somebody close to them. And we created these camps that kids could come to these camps, and every kid at the camp had lost somebody, and they were dealing with grief or dealing with a loss. And a lot of our counselors had been involved with this kind of stuff as well, through whether it was current or when they were younger. And they basically all kind of grieved together, and they learned coping skills. And it was a weekend camp. And boy, it took its own steam. And we eventually were able to create a camp in every Major League Baseball city. We did the fund. We funded it, and then we would vet out the organizations that would work with us. And as time went on, we built these camps in these communities, and they're still there. They're still up and running, and they're free, which is really important. But we had to go out and raise the awareness and raise the funds for these camps, and we've impacted a lot of children who, again, unfortunately, we all have to deal with death in our lives, right? But when you have to deal with it at a young age, sometimes it's devastating. Exactly. And then how do you deal with it? And I grew up in my youthful years. I grew up in an era where when somebody passed away, maybe you went to a funeral and you paid your respects, and then after that, it just kind of got swept under the carpet, and nobody really talked about it, how it impacted families and children and things like that. So we really felt that this was a niche and an age group that really had that could benefit from it.
You also have done another great feat is you adopted.
Yes, we adopted 2 children.
And I want you to know that I was adopted.
Oh, so wow. That's awesome.
I get to fully understand how that, and I'm sure your children are so thankful for what all the experiences and the knowledge and the care that you were able to provide to them. I sit down and think about, man, I was lucky to be adopted by 2 parents that gave it. And I was young. I was an infant. But I could easily be somewhere else. Just like
right.
Those children can easily be somewhere else. And what a great thing that is. But
our two girls they're adopted from Guatemala, and I'm proud to say one of them is a freshman this year at Washington State. So, and she wants to become a veterinarian. So, her life. Look, children. They don't get to choose their, where they're born and how they're raised and things like that. So, these 2 young girls were in 2 unfortunate situations, and we had heard about them, and we thought it would be a wonderful thing to do it. And our children, when we adopted these 2 little girls, one at 13 months, the other one at 3.5, our 6 biological children treated these 2 little girls like they were, blood relatives, and they continue to treat them that way. So, we've been able to give them some wonderful opportunity, give them some love, give them some care. and and now they have some wonderful opportunities in front of them.
Man, that's some awesome work. Mo Vaughn podcast, which by the way is powered by Perfect Game and the Vaughn Sports Academy. Got the great Jamie Moyer here with us. Jamie, we'd be remiss if we didn't ask some of the great teams you were on. I mean, Mo mentioned Mariners Hall of Fame. You guys in that run, there's in the 2000. I mean, loaded, yep. and absolutely full of talent. What are some of your memories that stick out about those teams?
Well, you know what? We had guys that cared. We had guys that wanted to play. We had guys that wanted to play not only for themselves, but they wanted to play for each other. And I think when you have a group or a team of guys that play for each other, becomes really, really important. And I think that gets started in spring training. It rolls into the season. And, you're willing as a player to do whatever it takes on the field for the next guy. And, if that's take a walk, if that's hit the ball the other way, if that's a sacrifice bunt, whatever it might be, but that's what you got to do. And, and when you talk about pitching, guys are pitching 3 days in a row. Some guys 4 days in a row. I mean, you got it. Look, the season's 8 months long. It's a long season. There's a lot of baseball games to be played. But somebody's got to pitch the innings. Somebody's got to take the at-bats. And, I played the errors that I played in. I played with a lot of guys that played hurt. And I think that's, another difference in today's game. We're trying to keep everybody injury-free.
Never going to happen.
There's just as many injuries. So, I mean, and I don't get it. The training is better. The eating is better. The players are bigger. They're stronger as a whole. A couple of weeks ago, I was out in Philadelphia and I happened to be down on the field and I was like, these guys are monsters. I mean,
huge.
They're average 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", 220, 230, and they don't have an ounce of fat on their bodies. So, I don't know, I'm not here to say what they're doing is right or wrong, but, there's just as many injury with all the technology and all the new ways of training and recovery and this, that, and the other. There's just as many injuries now as there ever has been. So, but, again, the errors that I played in, a lot of teammates that played hurt.
You pitched in a World Series, but very sick. Yeah. What do you remember about that? Because I imagine
it was that part of it wasn't very fun. I think I had some sort of food poisoning.
Oh,
and I the night before I pitched, I didn't have a good night. I spent a lot of that night in the bathroom, and just trying to, it almost felt like the flu. Tried to sweat it out. Got up in the morning, my clothes were soaking wet, took a shower, put sweats back on, put a sweatshirt back on, went back to bed, got up at like 12 and I had a peanut butter and banana sandwich with chicken noodle soup and went to the ballpark. And my wife then tried to talk to me. She said, "Mom, maybe you should go to the hospital." And I said, you know what? I've waited my whole life for this opportunity. I could go to the hospital after the game. So I went in and talked to the trainers, and because I was pretty loose from both ends, and got some Imodium to kind of stop me up a little bit, and then of course that game was delayed. So we had a lot of rain during that World Series in Philadelphia, and so there was a lot of pacing, a lot of I was very anxious to get started, but I think once I got between the lines. And, between innings, it was a little tough. I had a lot of stomach cramping going on. But you know what? When you get out and you compete, you kind of forget it all, right?
You have to. Everybody's dependent on you.
Yeah, especially at that stage. Like you're saying, you worked your whole life to get to that stage. That's
exactly
in Philly. I'm sure Philly appreciates that. I mean, I know that town.
Yep.
They're pretty ruthless.
For sure. For sure.
No one's going to want to hear, Jamie couldn't go in the World Series today because of food poisoning. I can only imagine it goes over in Philly.
Right. Exactly.
Look, brother, we are, Brendan and I are both thankful for your time, your energy, your information. Man, if you ever get a chance to come down here, I'm in Boca Raton. I'm going to get your number. You
All right.
have so much information to give on all fronts, just talking about baseball, life experience, mentality. I can use you down here at my academy, just spewing information. You're always welcome.
I'm a phone call away.
All right, brother. Thanks for coming.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
All right, bro. See you later.
All right. Take care.